Welcome to Private Club Radio, the industry's first and only program dedicated to education, news, events, trends and announcements. Broadcasting from Tampa, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Gabriel Aloisi.
It's Labor Day. You're probably working though. That's kind of a bummer, but I'm working too, so hopefully not so much of a bummer. And football just started. We had a fantastic week of college football. What a great weekend. Number 3 and number 5 teams in the country both lost. There were ups and downs, highs and lows. Hopefully your team made it to week 2 unscathed. I don't really have a team myself. I went to American University in Washington, D.C., and we didn't have a football team. So I've kind of adopted LSU as my team. I kind of picked it randomly, really no rhyme or reason. Maybe it's because I like their colors. It could be that bad of a reason, actually. No, I don't know. I like the signs. I like that they use the EAUX for the O sound. Dig that one for sure. Anyway, I'm just happy and pumped that football is back, and really looking forward to next week when the NFL starts back up. So we have a different episode for you this week on Private Club Radio. Generally, we have one guest that we interview on the show, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wrote an article about membership last month, and a lot of people were really intrigued by it. I got some phone calls, had some conversations about it. A lot of people shared it on their LinkedIn and on their social media, which I really appreciate. But it just seemed like the article resonated with folks, and maybe it was something I should share with a little bit more of a broad audience here on Private Club Radio and see what you thought of it. Now, I'll say right off the bat that it's a pretty avant-garde idea for the private club industry, a little bit outside the box. So it may be for you, it might not be for you, and that's okay too. But I think I'll get you thinking, and that's what I want to do on this show, get you thinking, get you considering new ways of doing things and new opportunities for your club. So I'm really looking forward to sharing those thoughts with you here today. And just so you know, it's going to be part of a 3-part series. This will be part 1, but I've developed a 3-part series on membership marketing, and this is going to be the first piece of that. But before we get to that portion of the show, it's time to do something we do every month here on Private Club Radio and open up the inbox.
And now, it's time to open up the inbox, presented by Club Essential.
Welcome to episode number 3 of the Inbox, presented by Club Essential. I'm joined as always by the man, the mystery, Rick Coffey of Club Essential. Rick, how are you today?
I am wonderful, Gabe. Looking forward to episode number 3. Appreciate everybody who's calling in for us. How you been?
I'm doing well, yeah. We have some excellent questions that have come in, some voicemails from listeners, so I'm really excited to get into those.
All right, let's do this.
Question number 1.
All right, our first one comes from Kelly Scarlett, the Member Services Director at a private club in Buffalo, New York. She wanted to reach out and ask for our feedback on legacy memberships. She wanted to see if you had any feedback on the success rates that certain clubs have with them, the trends that you see, and the parameters that are placed within the program. Any feedback you can provide, Rick, is greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you first off for Kelly for reaching out to us. We always appreciate that participation. Let me just make sure the listeners know what a legacy membership is. Generally, this is where when a child comes off from underneath their parents' membership, usually around the age of 21 to 25, this is where that person would then become their own member of the club and everything. So it is usually a very popular membership, but I don't see all clubs across the board using it, and I'm not sure why. Clubs are always looking for members that seem to fit in with their current membership, and then they're not in much need of hand-holding when they become a member. So a legacy membership is excellent in that case. Generally, you'll see that the dues structure will be tiered so that when they come off the membership, the dues may be 25% while they're in their 20s, bump up to 50% early 30s, 75% late 30s or so. So that's generally the structure to it. All in all, it's a very good membership. I don't see really any reason that clubs shouldn't use it. I don't see wild numbers across the country, and I'm not sure why that is. There could be many factors to that, but in my opinion, this should be a membership that every club has.
Kelly, thank you so much for asking this question. I do think, like Rick, that they're a very good idea for clubs. In my opinion, there are 3 pros, and here's what they are. Number 1, dues-paying members are the lifeblood of any club. And while initiation fees are needed for capital improvement funds and so forth, anytime you can add a new member, that's a good thing. Number 2, Rick alluded to this already, but they're already congruent with the current membership by the sheer fact that they're the sons and daughters of the current members. So they're going to fit in, so to speak, very naturally. And number 3, they have an affinity for the club that is ingrained within them. They've grown up in this environment, so they're less likely to jump ship. It's like a very simple lesson of branding is if you can get people that are attached to your brand, you're not going to lose them as clients or as customers. And it's the same thing with these legacy memberships. So that is my answer. Thanks, Kelly, so much for asking that question.
Question number 2.
All right, let's go to number 2. Gabe, one of the toughest things I hear across the country that a club has to deal with is onboarding a new member. Being the guru that you are, what advice could you give our listeners on how to assist a new member to become engaged and more ingrained into the club society?
Well, I think that every single club should have a mentorship program of some sorts. You see this happen in universities, at fraternities, and you see this in other areas. But a mentor is a great way to get a new member acquainted with the club, to sort of hold their hand and walk them through, so to speak. They can give key personal introductions to that new member. They can show them the ropes, so to speak. And I think if you get people spending more time at the club, they're going to build a real affinity and passion for that club, and they're going to stick around a lot longer. The easiest person to sell to is the person that you've already sold. So why make your job harder by constantly playing the numbers game and finding new members? Is if you keep good care of the ones you have, your job is going to be a lot easier as a membership director or as a general manager who has to answer to the board. How about you, Rick? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good point with the mentorship programs. Sometimes you just notice something that's a widespread issue across the industry, and so you just know that there's just a breakdown in a process somewhere, and this would be certainly an area that I think when I'm talking to CRM clients, this is often something that they're looking and pleading for help on. I think a couple things come into play here on why that is. Typically, the salesperson is so pressed for brand new membership that once a prospect signed, that person sort of leaves their mind and they're more concerned about the next person coming on. The other is keeping track of the onboarding steps. And because usually a good onboarding process usually is something where after 30 days of membership, either a letter or a phone call is sent out saying happy 1 month anniversary. The same thing at then 2 months and 3 months, and they're usually from different people and saying different things. And so to keep track of, has this been done and who's it been done by and on what date, if you don't have a good way to collect that data, then obviously that process is going to fall apart. So I think the solution to this is having somebody maybe different from the salesperson to be in charge of this. And so that could be a mentor, chairman at the club. But I think it has to be somebody else besides the salesperson, especially if they're being pressed for new memberships. And then we've got to have some method of keeping track of who's had what contact after they've signed the paper. So that's a tough one. I hope people do put more effort into it because onboarding new members certainly will help on the retention line.
Absolutely.
Question number 3.
Hi, Rick and Gabe. Brittany Kelly here. You spoke last show about using data to onboard members. So my question is, why aren't we using data to prevent attrition with a predictive churn model? We can format data points in order to pattern the habits of members that identifies risk thresholds and triggers. So in your opinion, are clubs not practicing this method because of their inability to collect data points? Or because the industry hasn't adopted a culture of data-driven solutions and predictive modeling?
Well, that's a good one. That's a very new age sort of process that's happening in the industry, and I don't think a lot of clubs may even know what we're looking at here. So to predict attrition would be to look at all the data around somebody. How much are they playing golf? How much are they spending in the dining room? How many times are they coming to the club? Do they bring guests? Being able to take all of that data and then put that data together to say, okay, who's the most likely to stay, all the way down to somebody who is probably the most likely to leave out of the club. I think very few clubs are doing this. I know there's a couple companies out there that are trying to start this process and help clubs with it. Again, it comes down to data, just like the onboarding of a new member. We need to have as much data as possible from spending and usage rates. But then you have to have somebody who's very trained to take that knowledge and, almost create an algorithm to figure out, who is the most likely to stay and who's the most likely to leave. So I think the industry as a whole is quite a ways away from this, but there is a starting point that's taking place out there. So it's a great question. Brittany's a very technically savvy gal in the industry, so I think she's probably already got the answer in her head, but it is a wonderful question. Do you have any thoughts on that, Gabe?
Yes, thanks, Brittany, for asking this question. And I think you're totally right. People don't use their system to its full potential. I know I don't in my own business. And I know the folks that work for me don't like they should. And it's just because we haven't built a habit using these new systems. It happens a lot with new software, that if you don't really force yourself to create a new habit, to get into the habit of using it and using all the features that it might have, then you sort of revert back to what you already know. Maybe you're using an Excel spreadsheet or something that's definitely not as powerful. So my best advice is to force yourself and your team, whoever's involved with this process, and have them start their day by using the system, by using the CRM. And I think you'll start to be able to use it in a much more powerful way. Some of these predictions will be a lot more easier.
Yeah, this is an area where I think there's just got to be sort of baby steps taken. I mean, the end result is so complex that I don't think a lot of people right now are currently trained on it. But just like you said, if we can start to take some steps and look a little bit deeper, I think we'll be on the right track.
Yep. When your head's in the weeds, it's really tough to poke it back out.
Yeah.
Question number 4.
So, Rick, I have a question for you. What is one feature of a CRM that you just could not live without?
All right, so I'm gonna sort of go away from my thought here and go to about the 200 clients that I deal with on this. I think the number one feature that they most appreciate is what's called form integration. That'd be number one because so many people at clubs are now the first introduction that they're having into a club is not even from a member. It is through the website via a contact us form. And so with a CRM, that data that is being filled out by the prospect online can filter right into the CRM automatically. And so just think about that. If you have 60% of your leads in a year come via a contact us form, most clients out there are then retyping that information either into an Excel sheet or something like that. Well, with a CRM and you have the integration in place, all that data feeds from that person filling out the form and it goes right into the CRM automatically. It can also then create a triggered email to go back to that person saying, thank you for, reaching out to the club. I'll be in touch with you very quickly to set up a tour. So, I mean, with those integrations in place, I mean, you can literally save hours probably in a week or a month because of that form integration in place. And then over the time of a year, I'm sure you're looking at days time that you're saving there. So that'd be my number one feature is being able to bring a contact us form from the website and have it feed all of that data right inside the CRM so that there's no manual entry.
That's fantastic advice. Anytime you can automate a task, I think it is just a huge boon to your productivity.
Yeah.
Question number 5.
Well, let's go to the random question of the week. I think it's my turn. So we just finished the Summer Olympics in Rio. I ask you, what is your lasting memory of Rio 2016?
Well, I got to see Michael Phelps swim when he was just a young lad. He was about 18 years old at the University of Maryland. I was going to American University in D.C., so I thought it was just so cool to see Michael once again just dominate like the Michael Phelps of old. I know he only raced in 4 or 5 races, but I think he took home, 4 golds and a silver. It's pretty damn good for a guy his age.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it was sort of that same concept that the dominance of certain individuals, even at an older age, compared to who they're racing against. And so that's Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt. Just incredible to see natural talent like that still be able to conquer over youth and everything like that. But then what some of the newcomers did do, like Simone Biles from the gymnastics team and Katie Ledecky in the pool, was just incredible. I mean, Katie Ledecky was so far better than all of her competition, and she's just starting at Stanford this year. So that's just crazy. But I love talent. I love seeing it, in play. And so those would be my 2 lasting memories.
I think a friend of mine, his name's Joe Harvey, online, he posted a Facebook post that they went to commercial break while after Ledecky had hit the wall, and they came back and the other competitors hadn't even gotten there yet.
It was insane. They weren't even in the picture.
It was pretty crazy. Rick, as always, it's a pleasure to be with you here on The Inbox presented by Club Essential. Can't wait to get back with you next month.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Have a good one, Rick.
You too.
Want to be on the next edition of The Inbox? Visit privateclubradio.com/inbox and leave us a voicemail. The best questions will get answered on the show.
It's always a good time to have that Rick coffee on the show. I really enjoy that. Hope you do too. So the title of today's episode is going to be called Membership is Not a Sprint. And this idea was something that I developed after I had Susan Green on this very program. Susan is the current president of the Professional Club Marketing Association. And Susan appeared here on Private Club Radio way back. I believe it was in February. She was episode number 7 of the Private Club Radio Show. So if you haven't heard that one, go back and check it out. I think you'll like it. It'll give you some context for what we're going to talk about today. But here's my idea. Let me lay it down for you. When it comes to private club membership, we shouldn't think of the sales process as a sprint. Now, most people who have ever been in sales have probably heard that term before. Sales is not a sprint, right? You might have even heard it from a board member or a general manager at your club. The problem is the advice that comes next is often wrong too. The classic follow-up to "it's not a sprint" is usually "it's a marathon." But I'm going to show you today why it's not a marathon either. Sales is not a sprint, nor is it a marathon. In fact, effective membership sales is actually a series of short sprints, more like a relay race. And just like a relay, you need to have a strong team from beginning to end. It would be nice to have Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt on your team, right? You need to maximize every single leg of the race. The overwhelming majority of private club marketing directors that I've met treat the sales process like a sprint. Here's the classic scenario that I've seen played out over and over at our clubs. We get a prospect. They're either referred to the club or they find out about the club through some marketing channel. And the first thing the membership director does is they schedule a tour. In about an hour, they briskly shuffle them from one area of the club to the other. They'll probably hop in a golf cart and see a few holes. They'll stop by the pool or the fitness facility. They'll have a peek at the tennis courts. They'll tour the dining rooms and banquet facilities, and they'll arrive back in the clubhouse in the membership director's office that day. The prospect will then be handed some pamphlets or some brochures about the club, and they're going to talk some numbers. Now, the savvy membership director will ask for the sale because that's what they've been trained to do. Really good people, really good salespeople have been trained at some point in their career to ask for the close. Even my own business consultant has always said, "Gabe, ask for the close." We hear that advice all the time. The problem is that tried and true membership sales process isn't working like it used to. But why is it getting harder and harder to sell a private club membership? I've heard a number of theories posed from industry experts right on this show who talk about more competition, there's changing value systems, there's time constraints, there's aging populations, and they give a litany of reasons that people aren't joining our clubs like they used to. All those theories have some truth to them. But I think there's something right under our noses that's even more important to recognize, and it has to do with the methodology of how we're selling. Now, a few months back, I had the pleasure of speaking with Susan Green right here on Private Club Radio back in February, as I mentioned on episode number 7. Susan's the current Professional Club Marketing Association president, and she's the membership director at the Oaks Club near Sarasota, Florida. If you've had the pleasure of meeting Susan, you'll be instantly struck by her bubbly personality and these really bright floral outfits that she wears. She's a Florida girl after all. But beyond her famously welcoming personality lies a really sharp and savvy salesperson. She's keenly aware of the market, her strengths, and selling points of her offering. Suffice it to say, if she got you in a room for an hour, she could sell you just about anything. However, instead of sharing her tips for getting a prospect to put pen to paper on our show, she made a statement that caught me by surprise. Here's what she said. Your goal as a membership director shouldn't be to make the sale, it should be to move the sale forward. Now, I'd love to tell you how that line hit me, right? The clouds parted from heaven, the trumpet sounded, except it didn't happen that way, not at all. In fact, if you were listening, you probably heard me utter something mundane like, "Great advice, Susan." And I moved on to my next question in the interview. But in the days and weeks that transpired, I let that statement marinate. I thought about it. I contemplated it. I knew this simple truth had something profound behind it, but I didn't know how it all fit in just yet. It took me talking to psychologists to figure out why it was so important. Now, if you know me, you know I regularly chat with psychologists. Not because I'm a kook or not to clear my head or work through some deep-seated issue, but to pick their brains on my marketing ideas. You see, I firmly believe that if we can understand how our markets think, how they will instinctively react, we can better position ourselves and our clubs for optimal results. Who better than a psychologist to tell us what our prospects are thinking? So during one of these conversations with a psychologist, I focused my questioning around creating desires. What does it take to create a desire in the mind of a consumer, someone who's contemplating purchasing a private club membership? The discussion naturally wove its way through a number of concepts, but it eventually landed on the notion of habit formation. It made a lot of sense to me, right? We desire things for which we've built a habit. Really simple. Conversely, habits can be built by associating experiences or things with a desirable outcome. It's a simple concept, but this was my first key to figuring out what Susan was talking about. Now, it only takes a quick glance at modern technology success stories to realize why habit-forming behaviors are the holy grail for brands. The very mobile device that's in your pocket or purse right now, or maybe in the center console of your car as you're listening to this show, is the best evidence that I can present. Surveys have shown that nearly a third of folks would prefer to give up sex before they gave up their mobile device. That's wild. That's crazy. Why is that? Because our phones have become the biggest habit for all of us. Everything that's contained in them has been designed with habit formation in mind. Every time you see that little red circle on one of your apps, it's a trigger, and that leads to a behavior. You see that notification icon, you want to press the button. You get rewarded with something. Maybe it's an important email. Maybe it's a cute picture of your friend's baby on Facebook. Maybe it's the next episode of that podcast that you're really, really into. Hopefully it's the latter. I read a great book recently. It was written by Nir Eyal, and it's called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. And Nir explains the process of how habits are formed with our everyday technology. It's a 4-step process, and let me lay it out for you. Number 1, there's a trigger. Number 2, there are actions. Number 3, there's a variable reward system. That's really important. I'll show you that. And number 4, there's investment. So using our example above of that phone, that little icon on your phone screen, that's the trigger. The trigger causes the action of you opening the app. The reward is what you see or experience. It's that cute picture of the baby. You're then asked to make an investment, whether that's filling out your profile, to respond or leave a comment to that photo, to share something yourself. Now, it's critical to note that rewards must be variable for these habits to form. Otherwise, monotony would cause boredom and usage would drop. If I just saw cute babies all the time, I'm going to get bored. You would too. I need to see links to informative articles. I need to see photos of my friends, a funny video every once in a while to keep me guessing, to keep me interested. Once this 4-step process is repeated a few times, habits get formed. So as the conversation with the psychologist I was talking to progressed, I found the second key that would unlock Susan's statement. Habits take 30 days to form. A month's worth of electrons firing and dopamine spreading and all that other good brain stuff causes these synapses to build, and eventually a habit is made. So here's the big reveal, and here is the theory that I'm going to pose to you today. Armed with the knowledge of how habits are formed and how long they take, I once again contemplated those words of Susan Green. As I alluded to earlier, the problem of private club membership is not the offer, it's the process. It's the way we're going about trying to sell something. If we can think of the sales process as a 30-day habit-forming process instead of that proverbial 3-hour tour like Gilligan's Island, I think success is going to come much more easily. I think the close ratios will go up, and I think you're going to turn more of your prospects into members. It really has to work. It's science. My challenge to boards, to GMs, COOs, and to membership directors is to begin to treat the membership sales process like a relay race spread over 30 days. Break that down into 4 weeks where you can get a prospect immersed in your club. Give those prospects variable rewards and let them begin to associate the time spent at your club with the good times in their brain. Get them in that habit. In practice, here's the 40,000-foot view of how this might look. Maybe in week 1, your prospect tours your facility like they normally would, and they're introduced to the key staff. But instead of just ending it at that, let's take it out to week 2. In week 2, prospects are invited back to play a round of golf or hit some tennis balls or sail around your harbor if you're a yacht club, so they see what it's like to decompress after a tough day at work. In week 3, you can invite them back to have a meal at the club so they can have a sensual experience that equates your club with delight. In week 4, invite them back once again to one of your affinity groups like a wine club so they can interact with folks who they can see themselves relaxing with. All the while, it's important for the membership director to follow up to make sure they're moving the process forward, like Susan so eloquently said. But after those 30 days of experiencing what it might actually like to be a member of your club, that prospect's going to be in a much better state of mind to pull the trigger. That's the time to ask for the close. They'll have built all those neural pathways over those 30 days that associate your club with the pleasurable moments in their life. They'll have made your club their habit. Can you get every prospect to go through this process? Probably not, and probably you wouldn't want to, but if you have a strong one that you think is really a fit for your club, send them on this process. If you think they're a person that might be on the fence, put them through this process and tell me how it works for you. I'd love to find that out. That's the theory that I want to pose to you today. And I know it's a disruptive concept. I know this is outside the box. I know some boards and some management are going to be opposed to this idea. I get it. But let me say this. It takes something disruptive and it takes something scary to effect change. Think of Uber 5 years ago. Do you think cab companies thought they needed to change their business model 5 years ago? Guarantee you they didn't. But do they today? I think they absolutely know they have to change. It's going to take something similar in this industry, a mindset shift to turn the tide, to revitalize this industry we all love. This isn't the only answer, by the way, but I think it's a strong one that will help many of your clubs out there. If it's not right for yours, that's okay too. Please keep searching. And remember, it's when we think we've got it all figured out that we're in the most danger. I'd love to hear what you think of this outside the box concept. Please shoot me an email. Write me at info@privateclubradio.com. I get all of those. You can fill out the contact form on the website. I'd love to hear what you think about this, whether you agree or disagree. And disagreeing is absolutely 100% fine. If you have any questions about this, would love to hear those too, and I'll shoot you my answers. Hope you really enjoyed this one. Hope it got you thinking. I hope you start to think about the membership process in different ways. Again, this may or may not be the answer for you, but maybe it got you thinking today. Until next week when we talk again, here's to your membership success.
Just because this round is over doesn't mean you can't enjoy the 19th hole. Check out privateclubradio.com for more. Private Club Radio is brought to you by Shake Creative, the premier marketing and design firm, helping prestigious clubs increase and retain their membership. Visit shaketampa.com to learn more.